What's good? What's good, everybody? We're on to episode 11 of Two Mics and One Bond. Last week we talked with Labron Horton, and this week we're going to do a part two and talk a little in depth on other aspects of his life. So, gentlemen, how are you guys doing today?
Good, good. Not bad.
Yep. Sounds like Kenny, you were expecting to have LeBron James, a basketball player. It sounds like you're a little disappointed.
Well, if it's not LeBron, so
Well,
yep,
that's
You
you
realize
have
you
a lot
didn't
to
say
live up.
anything. You didn't finish the sentence.
I think the silence says everything, LeBron.
Yeah,
There
it
it is.
might say something. I just didn't. I didn't hear it.
There it is.
How
There it
you
is.
doing, man?
Good, brother. How about yourself?
Not bad at all, man.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, so last week we kind of dig a little bit into LeBron's upbringing. So raised by some drug dealers, got some gang involvements. Um, we learned that he's a lover, not a fighter. So that was another thing that we learned. But he talked about a certain moment in his life when he turned. Was it when you were 19 years old with Tony Robbins?
Yeah. So, like the last episode, we really just talked about the first 20 years of my
That's
life.
what I'm saying. Yeah. But you talked about how.
Ev-
Go ahead.
Everything changed when my dad introduced me to my religion. Then about 3 or 4 years ago, I learned about Anthony Robbins, and that started it. I feel like I didn't really get out of the gangs and that life until 2001 when I took a seminar called Landmark Education. That was the complete transformation for the first 20 years. I would say 20 some years of my life.
What is that exactly? The
The
thing that you
landmark
talked about?
education.
Yeah.
Landmark Education is amazing. Um, so it's a seminar that teaches um, it's based on Buddhist principles, but they took all the Buddhism out. And it's a seminar that teaches you that um I don't know how to explain it without explaining. You have to go to the seminar to know. But it teaches you how to see the world. It gives you lenses on how to see everything outside of your head. It's extremely powerful.
Like a,
So
like a worldview seminar.
yes, yeah. It teaches you how to have a worldview. It's extremely powerful. The problem is the way they do it and the way they handle their business now. I stopped telling people to go because the way they run their business is distracting to that message. So I don't recommend a lot of people going unless you have a very powerful why in your life because you'll get distracted with how much they just keep trying to sell you other stuff.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Whenever money's involved, everybody loses their shit at some point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, in 2001, I was introduced to Landmark Education. I took what they call the curriculum for living, which is 4 courses, changed the trajectory of my life.
Very nice.
So, in what way did you see the trajectory of your life changing?
Well, since it changes everything, I'll just say it. If
Yeah.
you want to go to the seminar, have people contact you, they can contact me, and I can prepare you to go. But what it teaches is, and you know what? There's this guy who says he channels aliens who is teaching the same thing, and then there's a CIA guy that says he's giving you CIA secrets that teach the same thing. That really, life does not come with meaning. I'll say that again. Life does not come with meaning. For example, if you see a tree, it doesn't mean anything. Now, that doesn't say that you can't utilize it for something, but in your mind, we make up meanings about things, and that gets in the way of everything. So if you see a tree, it's just a tree. Now, you can make it mean, oh, that's going to be material for my house. That's going to be material for my pencil. That's going to be fruit that I can live from. That's going to be leaves that I can wrap things in. That's going to be bark that I can use or build a fire. You can do with it what you want, but it doesn't have an inherent meaning. That changes the game. So, for example, when I saw it is I took the third course, which is the advanced course. So there's forum, the forum in action, or whatever they're calling something different now. The advanced course and leadership program. That's the curriculum for living. So I was in the seminar, and one of the ladies got up and said, "Yeah, so anyway, I went to France on a tour and I was gang raped. So anyway, what I learned was," I said, "Whoa, whoa, what are you talking about? You were yes, I was gang raped. And anyway, so I learned this and I feel like, I was like, what the hell? Like, for everybody else in the world, that would mean I'm a victim. That would mean the world is not safe. It might even mean whoever the person is typical. Like, so example, if it was a white Frenchman, then she might be, scared of white men. Or if it was a black Frenchman, she might be scared of black men. Or if it was a foreigner, right? We make up all these meanings about what it means in our head, right? So one of their claims is that, for example, if you get into a car accident and let's say you break your leg, right? Well, let's say it takes an operation and years of therapy, physical therapy, sorry, and years of um, you know, doing all this training to get your leg back to where it works and functions, right? Your body has these automatic systems and
Yeah.
technology that we have to heal it, right? Well, Landmark says that won't be the problem. The problem was you made it mean that you can't drive anymore, right? We've all met somebody that they got to an accident and now they don't drive no more, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Because they
yeah.
made it mean that the road is dangerous. They made it mean that I'm dangerous. They made it mean that there's something wrong with me. And then that's where suffering comes in, right? Physical injury is one thing, suffering comes in here. And they teach you how not to suffer. So, like all the things that I talked about, being raised with gangs, being raised around drug dealers, being in drug raids in my house, being police raids, which when you come into that, they both look the same. I was able to heal that. It didn't mean I used to make it mean I'm gonna die. I don't deserve anything. Right? I'm in this gang culture. That means I'm gonna just be a gangster and die, or I'm just gonna end up in jail or being a shot caller in jail, or chased by the cops all my life. I was able to say it doesn't mean anything. I'm gonna create my own meaning. I'm gonna create my own story, and I'm gonna live into that.
I think I'm following what you're saying. I think I'm following what you're saying. And so essentially you're getting control of so yeah, so rather than the outside world placing things on you, you're essentially in a sense saying, no, I'm gonna take back power on this and I'm going to define what this is. So you use the tree for example, right? Like the tree does have a lot of purpose, but essentially you have a mechanism, you have an agent. You have to have an agent engaging with this mechanism, and that agent is capable of molding that thing into many different things. So my question to you is it you created it, or is it that's always been an option? You're just does this all make sense? Like the tree, obviously, like the we talk about the ecosystem and how your our bodies die and degrade. Like that process happens whether we choose to acknowledge it or not. So is this more of acknowledging the things that are there, or are you actually creating something out of nothing?
Both. So you said the word purpose. Purpose is for sentient beings that can create intention. The tree doesn't have a purpose. It has utility. Utility might be a house, a pencil, burning wood, keeping you warm. These are utilities, right? What people make it mean is if you're in the middle of the winter or in a cold situation and you don't have a lot of things to keep you warm, you make it mean if I don't have this fire, I might die. Well, maybe you will, maybe you won't. But what it is the tree has utility for warmth. So I'll take it even further. You said yes. The outside world's trying to put all these things on you, and you're free of that. Let me take it further. You're putting stuff on yourself. I used to think, for example, my mom can tell me you're black, so that means you have to work harder to get half the amount. I don't know about you, Kenny, but that's how I was raised as an African American black male. And I don't know any African American black males my age that wasn't taught that. Like literally, I don't know one. But that's a meaning. I don't have to take that meaning. You know what I think now? I got melanin. Do you know scientifically melanin helps me meditate better than white people? That's a science. You know what that means?
Mm.
Man, I have to work on the right things and I will get double the amount of some people. White
Mm.
people have, it's factual. Melanin not only protects you from the UV rays of the sun, it actually has scientific proof to help you process energy. So I don't have to accept that. So my mom can tell me because I'm black I have to work harder, but the problem isn't that. The problem is me accepting that.
Mm.
I don't have to accept that. I can say, you know what? It makes it harder to play the white man's game. And there's only evil, jealous, insecure, racist white people playing that game. I choose not to play it.
Okay, so um, nice to meet you, LeBron.
Pleasure.
Um, on the one hand, I think I understand what you're saying, but let me know. So I'm gonna reiterate so that at least you find out if we're on the same page. So some things I agree with, some things I'm gonna have to push back and challenge you on.
Yeah, please do. Please challenge me.
First,
I love it.
first
I
thing I
love it.
agree with is yes. I believe that on the basis of meaning, um, I would say that there are aspects of life where there's no it's not necessarily meaning per se, but there's no inherent, I would say, expectation, right? So, for example, you mentioned what it means to be black, right? So, the definition, um, the definition your mother gave you, for example, was you'll have to work twice as hard as the average white person. Okay, that's the interpretation she gave blackness to you, right? But you had to work your way
What it
out of
means to be black in America and succeeding in America. That's the context of the conversation.
yeah,
Right?
for sure. But obviously, there's no such thing in the sense of what I mean by that is there is no um, there is no natural. I mean, there's in the laws of nature, there is
Exactly.
nothing that works against black people in that sense. So there's
Exactly.
it doesn't really exist, right? And
Exactly.
then I also like the distinction you made between the tree's meaning versus its utility. I would still argue that there's an aspect of which that they're still intertwined. So, for example, it depends on how you look at the word meaning. So we can look at the word meaning as in the sense of language symbol. So the tree could be a symbol that's pointing to something, either simply a physical object in front of you that you should not run into because the symbol is going to be incredibly painful when you smash into it, right? Or we can look at it in the sense of its meaning, in the sense of what does it point to, what does it
I think that's a
basically
great distinction.
what is its source, right?
Yeah,
So
we're on the same page.
okay, um, so for sure I can 100% I say with the tree stuff. If we're on the same page there, I think there's some things we can hash out. But for the first thing, absolutely, I understand that. I was talking. I think we talked about this, Mr. Redberg. How, for example, there's no such thing as what it means to be a father, in the sense of I think that what a lot of the time it's not really the father. People get confused about what it means to be a father rather than dealing with what it means, what who they are as human beings. So if you're a good man, you will be a good father. If you're a terrible man, you'll be a terrible father. It's not necessarily you can't be a good man and then also be a good father. It's very, I would say the dichotomy is way too much. And I would argue that it's actually very, if not impossible, nearly impossible. So
Just for
um,
clarification, you're saying you can't be a good man and a bad father, right? Because I think you said
yeah, I don't think you can be a good
it.
man and a bad father. I don't
Yeah.
think the two. I don't think the two are in
I
the same
agree.
category at all.
I agree.
Um, but I have to push back a little bit. But I don't know the science, but I'm going to push back on it. And not just on the scientific, but for the also the philosophical. Because, for example, you're doing the exact same thing that your mother taught you, but it's on the opposite side. So, for example, if you say that your melanin means that you can that that you have some sort of an advantage over the white people, well, does it actually mean that, or is that simply a natural phenomena that's happening? Or and second is does that matter at all?
Well, you came to several conclusions, brother.
Please.
I didn't say it gives me an advantage. What I said is it does make it easier for me. But I'll give you an example. For example, White people, because of their DNA and their habits, can eat more salty food because they have a different threshold of high blood pressure than we do because of different factors, right?
Mm.
So what I'm saying is, if you take it all as a whole, right, we're all equal. Why? Because I can meditate easier doesn't mean that means I can go into certain scenarios that I can't go in that white people can. So it's like we're all equal because you look at the whole story. But what it does mean is, there's things easier for me, like meditation, and people of color, Buddhists, I mean, not Indians, Native Americans, and I mean Indians from India, Native Americans, people of color, people who have, um, here's an even better situation,
Sure.
right? White people, because they're not in the sun in Europe as much, they're way more vitamin D deficient than we are, right? Because if you're in the sun and I'm in the sun, I'm going to be able to process vitamin D better, right? But black people, since we stay out of the sun as much here, we're more vitamin D deficient. So, in other words, you just have to calibrate how you operate based on the factors. In other words, to go back to the tree, black doesn't mean anything. It's just factors involved. It's just utility, right? So because of my skin, I can hang out in the sun a little longer than white people do and have a little less effects than they do,
Yeah,
right?
for
So I
sure.
don't have to work harder. I just have to work differently. That's a different story.
I think okay,
Mm.
okay, I can understand that. I do believe that there are definitely physiological differences between us, white people, Asians, everybody, right?
Right.
Whether minor, major, I'm not too privy on the subject, but I do know that common sense says absolutely. Though we are basically all humans, and not basically, we are all humans, and we are all, at least in America, under the law, um, equal. We do differ physiologically. We do differ on a biological level, even if it's just
Right.
minutely.
Right.
So yeah, definitely.
Oh.
Yeah. So what I'm saying with meaning, I don't mean the definition of it. A better way of saying is everything in life has a utility. Nothing in life has an inherent meaning. That's why I believe in the Bible. Why? Because God is teaching me the meanings I should have.
Mm.
Right. But when
Say that last part again. You cut off for a
I
second.
think you muted
oh,
yourself.
hold on, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Now you're good. Now
Yeah.
you're good.
Every
Yep.
time I get a call, I don't know
Oh,
why. Can you hear me?
we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I don't know why. Every time I get a call, it messes up the sound. Anyway,
Yep.
God says, for example, my dad was preaching to me about this yesterday. He was like, the reason why Jesus wept is because he said they didn't understand what they were doing, right? So God says, when somebody acts up against me, what I should do is make that mean that they don't understand and to have compassion for them, right? The Quran says it, make it mean something else. The Bhagavad Gita says make it mean something else. They might be similar, right? Witchcraft means, I don't know, all the hoodoo people I know believes get some vengeance. Now that might not be all hoodoo believers, but those are the hoodoo people I know,
I can
right?
I
They
can
don't.
assure you that's what it means. Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I dated a hoodoo girl, and that's all I know. So she was just very vengeful, and I knew a few hoodoo people. So I don't know. My point is, I read the Bible to help me put a meaning on something. We're meaning making machines. You just need to put the meaning that's effective and more reality based. It's not that we don't make meanings. It's just that the tree doesn't have any inherent meaning. It has inherent utility.
Okay. So for example, and I dig what you're saying. So let me push in a little bit and say, okay. So for example, is it, would you say that it's meaning we're dealing with, or is it simply the narrative that we tell ourselves? So, for example, I was talking to a buddy yesterday. We were talking about how people talk about their toxic parents or their traumatic, the things that their toxic relationships or traumatic experiences with parents, which basically puts them in a very vulnerable, very victimized, a victimhood mentality today,
I
and a
agree.
lot of them feel that way and live that way. All right. And a buddy of mine who's a pretty cool guy, smart guy, said, "Hey, listen." He was talking to somebody. Said, "Dude, like, couldn't isn't it possible that you could tell yourself a different story that hey, for example, your father, whatever hell he didn't do it because he hated you. For example, like if he didn't come to all your soccer games, he came there, but he was working, he was busy, he was tired. He still provided clothes, food, and shelter for you, and he was generally positive, positively on your team, right? But he didn't come to your games doesn't mean he hates you. Um, but instead of saying, well, so instead of saying my father didn't come to my games, therefore he hates me, is simply looking at your past and your life accurately and trying to tell yourself a much more accurate story of what actually happened than attribute something that's much more emotionally jarring.
Right. I mean, and you're spot on. I'm glad you used that example because that's what helped me get past it. So, for example, my biological father went to jail in the South in the 70s with weed that would get nowadays, it wouldn't even get you, it would get you a damn ticket, right? He was not able, therefore, to be in my life. Then when he got out, he was on probation. He was not able to come to myself. I made it mean he hated me. I made it mean he didn't like me. I
Yeah.
made it mean that he didn't want to be my dad. No. Later on, when I didn't become, when I my emotions came down, and Landmark taught me how to say what occurred, not what it meant. What occurred? What occurred is he got arrested. He was forced to be in jail. Then when he was forced to be in jail, he was in Tennessee. He couldn't move to California to be in my life. He really wanted to.
Yeah.
So my mom was being a typical angry, vengeful mom and preventing me from getting his letters. He used to send me tapes. He used to want to call me. So what occurred was he got arrested. He was and then when he was probation, and then my mom stood in the way. I made it mean he hated me. He doesn't want to be a dad. I was abandoned. When I let go of all that, I found out the truth. He loved the crap out of me. He wanted to be there. He's dealing with his own shame and his own trauma from Vietnam and from jail. So he didn't know how to reach out in a way effectively once he did move to California. But the first thing he did was move to me when he could. The first thing he did was try to repair the relationship when he could. But I had too much meaning in my head that were lies. So then when I took the meanings away and found out what was really happening, what person, what their meanings in their head is, because other people are making up meanings too. What was really going on, and receive that without meaning clearly. And that gives you a clear view of the world, which makes you really powerful, man.
No,
Really powerful.
I agree with you. I mean, I think C.S. Lewis. I don't know. So C.S. Lewis once he said something that I think is pretty apt for this. He said that we're f- we're much more prone to judge than to describe.
Right,
So and that creates a lot of problems. So it's like my child was being an asshole today. Like, what the hell does that mean? Like,
right.
what did the child actually do? Well, he didn't.
Exactly.
You know
That's a meaning you put on it. Your
exactly,
child's not being an asshole, your child's being a child.
exactly. So it's
Your
like
child is reacting to your parents.
exactly. So it's like instead of attributing quick, unthought judgments to situations and people, it's usually better to describe the situations and describe the people. So instead of saying, for example, my child was an asshole, it's like no, my child simply just didn't put down the toilet seat, right? When I asked him
Exactly.
or she to whatever the hell, right?
Exactly.
Um, yeah,
That changed my life right there, brother. That changed everything. That's what got me away from gangs. That's what got me away from lying and stealing and cheating. And I was an unadulterated piece of shit. Let me be clear on that, man. I was a robber, stealer, manipulator, all of that, bro. Because I made my life mean that what else am I going to do? I'm around drug dealers and thieves and murderers. I made it mean, then that's my lot in life. If I want to get a woman, lie to her. Right? Because I was taught women want to be lied to anyway. They don't want to deal with reality. They don't want to deal with the facts. Those are lies. I was raised that way, right?
Yeah.
White people are going to do this and white people are going to do that. And white people hate you. My mom is damn near white herself. Like if you saw Sinners, she was that one lady. My
I've
mom's
been
the same complexion.
I've yet to watch it,
So
but go.
yeah, so you're right. That changed my life because then I was able to be like, no, my parents just went through the same stuff that all of us African Americans went through. You know, my dad was he had a job as a drug counselor before Reagan defunded all of that. So you know what he did? He was like, well, I know a bunch of drug addicts and I know a bunch of drug dealers and I don't have any other skills. Fuck it.
Start a business. Start a business. Yeah. So I noticed in the very beginning when you were describing this way of thinking, you said essentially it was associated with Buddhism, but then you take out the Buddhism part, right? And you're kind of left with it. I understand that concept. Walk me through how you integrated that back into your belief systems. Like as
Oh,
far
what do
as
you mean?
so you were raised a Christian, from my understanding, right? Your pastor,
Hmm.
you're,
Baptist, Southern
yep,
Baptist. Hmm.
there it is, SBC, Southern Baptist. At a young, some point in your life, right, 20 years in, you get exposed to this world of philosophy, a way of thinking, right? This
Right.
way of thinking, I'm assuming, maybe you didn't throw aside your SBC, but I'm assuming this way of thinking, this philosophy, it had a source, and the source that you talked about was Buddhism. And so what you said was take out Buddhism, and whatever's kind of left is there. So at
Yep.
some point, you're having to take that and put it back into, like, how did that connect with SBC? How did that connect to all this other stuff?
Well, I was converted to my religion, which made it easier because my religion doesn't teach that. My religion teaches only Jesus is righteousness, everybody else is unrighteousness. So why are we having all these other conversations? Right? So like I was part of an SB. I'll only speak about my church, and I'll also say that the churches that I've talked to, other African Americans have had similar situations, but I'm only talking about mine. They gossiped, they talked shit about each other, they put down the local hoe. They put down the local hussy. They put down the drug dealer. They put down the pastor. They did all these things, right? No problem. So how I made it is I converted to my religion, which says, yeah, that's what we do. That's why you need Jesus. Why are you judging them? Why sit there and say this person's bad and this person's not? We're all bad. We're all sinners. Period. Why are we even talking about this? So
That,
then I so I'm so glad you asked that. I'll tell you exactly how I connected it. Then
okay.
once I went there, I went to my I was there for 5 years. Then I went to Landmark. Landmark starts off with life is empty and meaningless. So does the Bible. I'll prove it. Genesis 1:1. The world was out what? The world was what?
It was void, without void?
Without form and void.
Yep.
No meaning. No nothing. Then God created it. And then what did he do? He said he gave it to Adam to name things. He just
Mhm.
didn't name things. He also named situations. He also named circumstances. He named a lot of stuff, not just the names of the animals.
Yeah.
So he said, you go make it mean something. You go create. I'm a creator. I created you in my likeness and image. Now you go create. Go create a story of your life. Go create buildings. Go create empires. Go create your family. So it fits perfectly with me because everything starts off formless and void, and we fill it with form and we fill it with meaning. That's what you're supposed to do. You're just not supposed to fill it with lies, right? This is not the white man's world. This is God's world. And if you don't believe in God, this is the world of universal scientific principles that we operate on. This is not the white man's world. And if we all understand Black history, everything that they think this white man's world, we came up with. How do you, what's being controlled by everything now is algorithms. That comes from a Moorish Muslim. Pythagorean theorem has already been known, was discovered by North African philosophers 1,000 years, and Pythagoras studied in Egypt. We know this. Most historians know this. Right? So then I can escape all those things because I'm able to look at what you mean. Now, there's a CIA guy going around. His name is Bustamante, I think. He says the biggest thing you can learn is perception and perspective. Perception is everything in your head, perspective is what you're thinking, what somebody else is thinking. right? So, in other words, if you can get out of your head and say, well, what is that person actually thinking and doing? And how do I see it from their perspective? That's the greatest power in the world. And that's what that gives for you. Instead of me saying, what does this white man say when he says all lives matter? I can think as a black man and say, oh, you're just racist. Or I can think, maybe they're misinterpreting the message because they're in an echo chamber. And I actually asked this one white lady that I used to work with, do you hear that since Black Lives Matter, do you hear only Black Lives Matter? And she said, yes, that's what they're saying. I know it. And I says, have you ever talked to a black man that said that? No. You ever listen to black men when they say that? No. Then how do you know? Well, I know it. That's it. I know it. Well, I said Black Lives Matter. I never meant that. I know the head of the Black Lives Matter chapter in LA. He doesn't think that way. So what happens is since I don't make it mean something, like a lot of people who believes in all lives matter, they made it mean only Black Lives Matter. So if you add only Black Lives Matter, then all lives matter is the perfect response. So they made it mean something. When you hear everybody else, and this is what they should have said, we feel like everybody else's lives matter except us. We're saying, can we matter just as much as the white guy's house matters? That's might be burning down just as much as the Asian person's issues matter. Now, maybe we're wrong about how we feel, but that's how black folks feel. I feel that way sometimes.
Yeah.
I've been treated wrong by cops. I felt that way. But we're not saying only Black Lives Matter. We're saying we should matter as much as everybody else. So that's where it gets confusing. And when you're having those conversations, there's no dialogue, right? You ever seen an all lives matter person and a Black Lives Matter get along? They can't because they're not talking to each other. They're talking over each other.
No, we're talking to each other right now.
What's
You
that?
can't.
We're talking to each other right now.
What does that mean?
I'm an all lives matter person.
Oh, but I'm not a Black Lives Matter person. So
Oh,
we're not.
okay.
We're
So
not. We
I
all are
guess
all
that
lives
defeats the
matter people.
purpose.
Right? And that's the point. And black people are not in only lives matter. What you're saying is, I disagree with your feeling. You might be saying, no, you're not being excluded. That's a different conversation,
Mm.
right? But until you address that, you and the Black Lives Matter person are going to have an argument because that's a simple question. The question is, do your feelings or perceptions conclude to the fact that you don't matter? And I'm sorry, those are feelings. Maybe you're right. There's a black
Mm.
guy that did a study that says no, white people are not indiscriminately or disproportionately shooting black people. I agree. He did that study up and down, left and right, and he tells the story of how liberals wanted him to stop saying that. Here's what he doesn't say. Here's what they won't show you. The study also showed that they do disproportionately do everything else. So, in other words, if I disproportionately pull you over, and I disproportionately treat you wrong, and I disproportionately interact with you, and I disproportionately charge you, you mean to tell me I don't have a legit reason to think that you might be disproportionately shooting us?
Yeah.
So you're saying
I
there are
understand how you
things.
feel. I
Yeah.
disagree with you that you feel we're being shot disproportionately. That's an understanding of a feeling. You'll get much better in that conversation. And I'm with you. I'm all lives matter. I'm with you. We're not being disproportionately shot. But
Mm,
here's the fact. We're
we
being
are.
disproportionately mistreated.
He-
Those are
he-
facts.
Here's the thing.
Scientifically proven by the guy that says we're not being disproportionately shot.
No, I understand. And it's so a lot of this, sometimes it gets really difficult to address these kinds of things because as much as we don't like to admit it, the truth is that as human beings, we're emotional creatures. We're
Right,
both intellectual and emotional, so we feel things. But at the
right,
same time, I have to say what I know for a fact. I think we are, for example, black people are in fact being disproportionately shot at. The problem, however, is that the facts are not on our side. The truth is that black people are disproportionately killed by other black people. So if you look at, for example, a couple of years ago, this year, last year, I think the statistics show, and I could be wrong about this, please, Josh, let me fact check me if I'm out of control here. I think it was about 200 black people shot by police, while about roughly about 9,000 plus black people shot by other black people. The problem, I've always been of the mind that I believe I want black people to succeed. I want them to do well. I want them to move to to be, an incredible to be an incredible people. But the problem is that if you're saying, for example, that we are being mistreated, like for example, I'm Nigerian, right? But when I walk
So am
into
I.
are you
Yeah, when I did my DNA test, a majority of me is Nigerian. Igbo.
Igbo?
Igbo, yeah.
That's my tribe, man.
Yeah. 80, I was almost,
Hey, let's go.
it's almost disproportionately African Americans are Igbo tribe. That's the ones they took because we were business people. We were not warriors. So
Ooh, you
we
hear that,
ended up
Kenny?
a lot
You
of
hear that?
slaves.
Did you hear that,
We
Kenny?
were
Hold on. I need Kenny to hear that. You are not a warrior. You hear that,
Ethiopians
Kenny?
are
Hey,
look,
say again?
Ethiopians, he knows historically. Ethiopians are the only ones that would push back the Italian raid. They were the only ones in history that never been conquered. We're business tribes. We're not warriors.
Educate Kenny
Ethiopians
for
are the
me,
best
please.
ones.
Come on,
I know you
Kenny.
might not like it.
Kenny, this is your tribe.
Don't worry. When 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 the judgment comes, I'll come visit both of you in hell. Um, so the idea is that when I walk into a store, nobody knows that I'm Nigerian. I mean, they might be. I know that is people can tell that obviously, I don't
You're not white.
particularly. Yeah, I'm not right. So, and my point is simply that for the majority of for my major my experience in America is very similar, at least on a very, I would say, superficial level, very similar to the average everyday black person in America. So if I go
Yeah,
into a
it
store,
is. You guys get treated well, but you outperform almost everybody.
and that's my point is that so if but there's a reason for that. So I have to go back to these numbers again. I don't know how well if we're going to hold to these numbers, but when black people commit a disproportionate amount of crime, a disproportionate amount of crime, and therefore it seems as though, and one might argue, well, which came first, right, the chicken or the egg?
Exactly.
That's
That's my
fine,
argument, by the way.
and that's fine. We can address that, but it doesn't negate the fact that if you're in a school and there's a bunch of children, a bunch of kids that commit the most delinquencies, it seems as though the teachers will have their eyes on those children more than the other kids because they're the ones who commit the most delinquencies. And so even when,
Well,
why is that?
okay, because you're starting in the middle of the story. And you are the perfect reason why I make this point. And this goes into YBMA. So I don't know if you heard the first episode yet, but Young Black Men's Academy is based on three basic principles. One, it's not your fault. Two, it's your responsibility. And three, the obstacle is the way. So actually, Nigerians perform better than statistically Jews, statistically white people, and Asians when we come to this country. Then goes down to other African Caribbeans and those who didn't go through chattel slavery. Okay, so here's my point. Why do you not do all those things? You don't do all those things because you have an accurate view of what America is, what makes America successful, and your personal cultural habits are conducive to that. I'll give you an example. If I take your kid and I teach your kid, your child, I steal your child, and I raise your child that black is terrible. Nigerians are the worst Africans in all of the continent. Just in your DNA. There's nothing you can do. You might as well just serve me because you ain't shit.
Yeah.
And then what's gonna happen? It didn't work as well, and so your grandson starts kind of thinking, I don't know about all that. So I beat the shit out of him. I stop everything he tries to do. And I tell him the same thing. So then it starts working with your great grandson. So I reward him. I let him do more things than your dad, your son, and your grandson couldn't do, then it really works with your great grandson. And he's really successful. And he's balling out of control. So what's the thinking that you think he's going to think to be successful? Everything that black people do that you write that causes everything you said we do didn't come from Nigeria, homie. It came from the white slave master. I surf. I'm a surfer. I know that Peruvians invented the sport, took it to the Polynesians. I know that for a fact. Colored people came up with the sport. What white people did, the grandparents of my generation, the white people of this generation did, is made so that make me think that I don't belong on the ocean. So you know what my uncle told me? He's Igbo too. He comes from the same word I do. You know what he told me? We don't belong in the water. What are you doing in the water? Nigerians don't teach that, do they?
No, never.
Ethiopians don't teach that, do they? Congolese people don't teach that. We were on the water when they took us. That's the slave master's mentality who did the best thing in the world. He made us think the way we think instead of trying to force it on us. He made us not value education. He made us not value purpose, drive, determination. I work for a company here that started in 1950 something. I can't remember. It was maybe 52 or 51. The grandson, used to come in and talk to me. He's great. He's an awesome dude. You know that my great-grandfather started a business the same year his great-grandfather did? You know what happened to my great-grandfather's business? It's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. The Klan burned it down twice.
Yeah.
So how many people have one little small obstacle and give up? But you're expecting us to be like, oh, I'm going to keep being a businessman, even though the Klan keeps burning it down. So I'm here struggling while he's over here. If I don't want to tell the story, whatever. I don't know if he failed or he just changed his mind, but he had a whole nother career he was going to do.
Thank.
He had the option of not doing his career and becoming a nepotism and becoming an owner of an awesome business. And when his dad dies, who his grandfather started, he's going to be, I think he's going to kill it. I won't mention the business. But guess what? I'm over here struggling trying to create a new one so my grandkids can have it.
Yeah.
So that's what you're not factoring in, brother. Yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad. But we didn't pause that.
Let me address that if possible. I think you've spoken very well. Thank you. And it's not a factor that I don't particularly factor in. It's a factor that I don't address it very much, and here's why. So you're right that so two things. First is that I'm not one who says that the US government, for example, is incredibly innocent and there haven't been any specific and coordinated attacks against the black communities. I couldn't possibly say that. I think it'd be crazy to say that. Second is I'm not one to say that slavery and I would say psychological, emotional, spiritual problems that come with that on a generational.
I just want to be clear. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about I'm talking about a generational, intentional thing.
And
Slavery is just one tool.
and let's just say slavery and everything that comes with that, the things that affect the mind, the psychology, the sociology, and the heart and the spirit of people. Absolutely.
I just want to be clear. We're not talking about the same thing. I just want to keep hearing, but we're not talking about the same thing. I'm not talking about slavery and everything that comes with it.
Then no worries. Then it will be incredibly silly of me to continue speaking if I'm not addressing what you're.
So where are you guys, LeBron? Do you know where you guys are missing each other? Because I
Well,
like
I
this.
don't. I want him to keep talking. I just want to know what I'm saying is this. For example, I'll use this. You can go into. Let's say I'm the United States and you're Nigeria,
For sure.
right? In my heart of hearts, I say, I want to take Nigeria over. I want to subjugate Nigeria. I want to make Nigeria fail in every way. That's an intention, right?
Yeah.
My biggest tool would be mustard gas. And let's say mustard gas worked. And then there's going to be effects down the line. So let's say before my dad had me, he got hit with mustard gas and it handed over to my genes, and I had to have problems, and my kids start having problems. That's one thing. What I'm saying is, one, that was one tool out of 100. Two, the problem isn't mustard gas. The problem is my intention that I will always try and take Nigeria down. That's the problem, not the slavery. Slavery is unrecoverable. All kind of people went through slaves. The word comes from the Slavic people
Yeah.
because Moors put people as slaves first. The problem isn't that. The problem is they took our ability to overcome slavery. That's where we disagree. You can overcome it. You can overcome everything that black people come up because you don't have this. You don't have all the ignorance that makes you not respond to shit properly. We don't. And that's why I said YBMA teaches, it's not your fault, homie. Slavery is not the problem. The Italians, racism is not the problem. Italians had racism. Irish people had racism. Indian people had racism. But you know what they had? Their culture, their values, their belief systems, their history. They can go back and start Italian stuff to get it from Italy. Indians can go back and get hair to sell to black people. We don't have that connection. I can't call the homie in Congo. I don't have the mentality. I don't have the value system. I didn't choose my religion. I had to pick from the religion of the slave master. It's not the religion, it's the choice.
Mm.
So what I'm saying is that it's not your fault, homie. It's the slave master's fault that put those bad ideas in your, it is your responsibility. I think that's where me and you agree. You got to fix it.
Yeah, I
You got to
think
get those cultural tools back. You got to get those philosophical tools back. You got to get those value systems back.
so. For example, let me ask. I think I would say that on the you are right on the points of responsibility. I think we are. I think we're in agreement there, 100%. So let me ask you this though. You mentioned that, for example, our minds may, for example, function differently based on these cultural, traditional, and homeland factors, right?
Right.
But here you're an American. You grew up here. You had a generation here. You had a family here, and so forth. And you seem to have come to a place where your own mind, your own life, your own for example, you walked away from the gang life. You walked away from the ignorant life. And you're building something for yourself, and so forth. So the question is, if you could do it, why can't others? Why can't other able-bodied, able-minded, young African American men and women do the same?
Well, the same reason why the government helps white people, because people need help. So if you look at a bell curve, on the bell curve, if you throw 100 people into a water that can't swim, 90 are going to die, and naturally 10 people are going to freaking figure out a way and survive because that's just who they are. Those are statistics. The reason why the U.S. government gave Irish and Italian people free land when after the Haitians had a successful war and put Napoleon Hill in a bad situation, so he had to sell us a third of this country, and then the government gave everybody except for black people after they promised them 40 acres and a mule land. And some were smart enough to give it to their kids, to give it to their kids, to give it to their kids. And some of these people still have that access. Or when they put it in the law that you couldn't sell it to black people. Right. So I was a statistic. I'm starting YBMA and the government's helping white people to this day because statistically, some people won't figure it out without your help. Statistically, if you throw 100 people in a bad situation, sorry, only 20 are going to make it. It's called the Pareto principle. It's called the 80-20 rule. You can't escape that. You can't escape universal laws. So you want to, the reason why taxes are an incentive. The reason why we give tax breaks, the reason why we give grants, the reason why we gave white people years and years and years of free land, the reason why we give grants, down payment assistance, is because statistically, 80% of people need some form of help. The top 20 only need a little help. The bottom 20 need a whole lot of help. More people per capita and amounts, more white people are on government assistance than black people per capita. In other words, a higher percentage of white people are on assistance. Why? Because across the board, most people need help. That's why. Because if you don't change the circumstances, then only 20% are going to survive. But if you give 100 people, awesome. If you give 100 people swimming lessons, floaties, right? Coaches, right? People to sit there and help you if you drown, then 90% of them will survive. That's why.
No, and so I don't really see where our disagreement is then. I think that and
Well,
you can enlighten me if I'm misunderstanding something.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I don't. If we're, I don't know that we are disagreeing. I'm saying I'm starting an organization, a 501c3, to teach Black people these secrets, to teach what you know as a Nigerian naturally. I don't know what it is about Nigeria, but you guys just kick ass, dude. And
There's
you
not
come to this
warriors.
country, you go to Europe, you go to France, you guys kick ass. I don't understand it. But what I want to do is get my people who went through chattel slavery, who was taught that you're terrible, you're useless, you can't do anything. When we started, you ever heard of the Oklahoma massacre?
Yeah, I did.
You know why they massacred us? We were kicking ass in Wall Street. We were kicking ass in business. We were kicking ass, and they bombed us. Some white people don't want to go to college because white women are doing better, and white women are throwing liberal arguments at them. You know what? Get it. You ain't getting bombed, homie. You ain't getting the Klan coming in and massacring you. You ain't getting the banks redlining your efforts to start a business. We can't talk about our failures without talking about the people that made us fail.
So
I have a
you
question.
please
Oh, good.
no, please go on.
I was curious. The three principal rules you talked about, right? You said the first one is what was the first one?
It's not your fault.
Not your fault. Your
It's
responsibility.
100% your responsibility,
And then what was
and
the
the
third one?
obstacle is the way.
Okay. Would
And
that
the
be
obstacle is
true?
what?
The
The
way.
obstacle is the way.
The obstacle is the way.
Seneca, and it's a really good book about that. That's us. That comes from Seneca. He was a Greek Stoic philosopher.
So when you look at those three things, we used the topic of slavery and just the stuff that Black people went through. I thought about it. I was trying to look at it from the alternative perspective. If I was a Caucasian individual hearing this, right? Because it sounds like the three principles kind of work together for them as well, right? It's not your fault. Technically, it's not their fault. They didn't do anything, but it is your responsibility to do
But
something about.
yeah, that's a
Is
liberal argument. I'm not
no,
making
no,
that
no. I'm
argument.
not. No, no. I'm not. I'm not. No, no. I think you're missing what I'm trying to get at. I thought those three principles were only used for this context. What I'm saying is, I'm seeing those three principles as something that can be applicable in many.
No, no, no. I
Okay,
disagree. I
good.
disagree. In the Black community, we call this, hey, when a white person complains, their problems, I'll say this, and I've been dreading the day I wanted to say this. I thought this for 20 years, and now it's time for me to get in trouble. So I'm
Are you
ready for
sure
the
you want to
smoke.
do it on this one? You want to do it
I'm
here?
ready for the smoke. I'm ready for the smoke. I'm ready for the
Well,
smoke. I'll
it's
tell
not
you
that
how I
Joe
came up
Rogan.
with this
Okay,
revelation.
Kenny, we're gonna make this the 10-second clip that goes viral.
Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. No problem. I'm ready for the smoke because I'm part Hispanic. So I'll say this. Okay. How I came up with this revelation was I was sitting around, I was in Antelope Valley, California. I was part of a salsa group. And we were doing all kind of things. We were a salsa group, but we were a community. And I went to, and we would, as Hispanics do, we have a celebration for everything. Somebody's got a quinceañera, somebody got a raise, somebody's got a party, somebody's got an anniversary. We party all the damn time, all the time. So we were at some party. I don't know what happened, but it was during the week. It was like maybe a Tuesday. And I was sitting around eating cafecito. That's just, coffee con leche, right? Coffee with cream. And I was eating pan. I was eating bread. And we're sitting around. And I normally don't do this. If you could tell, I'm usually the guy that's running my mouth. But I don't know why. I think I was having a bad day. And I was sitting down just listening. And this is all in Spanish. I was sitting down and somebody else is drinking cafecito. Oh, I was having a bad day. My boss, whatever, whatever. Somebody else sat down or somebody else was talking. Yeah, my business is suffering. Whatever, whatever. We're all just bitching and complaining. All of us. Some people are dealing with racism. Some people are dealing with bad problems, whatever. And I noticed that. Then later on that week, we all got together, almost the same people. Man, we were happy. We were just dancing. Life was good. Oh, yeah, I overcame this. Yeah, it was great. Yeah, I got a new account. And I was like, what? How did that happen so fast? And then I realized it. Oh, wait a minute. It's their fault. You chose to come to this country. You chose to deal with these white people. You chose to deal with this situation. You chose to deal with them. That's powerful. Choice is powerful. Then, what did they do? They played to their God. They did what we Hispanic people do. We sit around, we talk shit about everybody, and we talk shit about what's going on just to vent, to get it out. We know you're humans. We know white people are not different than black people. We know all of these things. We're not racist. None of those people were racist people. We were just venting. Then what do? We turned to our culture. We act cafecito. We danced. We talked shit in our language. We dealt with it. Then what do? Everybody from Latin America, they're not entrepreneurs. They just don't have jobs to go to like we do. They're natural. We naturally just get in and work, and we had it. We dealt with it. We put in extra hours. Nigerians don't work hard. They're just smarter than us. But us Hispanic people, we just work hard. We just put more hard work into it. And we overcame with our culture, with our language, with our religion. So it is white people's fault. You dropped the bag, homie. You were
But
given all
but
kind of
that's
stuff. Your family came here and made choices.
but
But
okay.
it's,
So let me push on that then, like, because now that's like, so maybe this is something I need to be enlightened with. So you're welcome to unravel for me. But to to look at a person, a white person right now, and to say to them, "You are responsible," it's like me saying, it's like saying I was in slavery or you were in slavery. It's like that's not true. You feel the repercussions of what your ancestors, both ancestors did. Like there's consequence that came for both. So whether it's you,
so are you
what
talking about like what liberals say, or are you talking
you know, I have
about
I have no idea what liberals say. So let's
okay,
let's be
because
clear there. Let's be clear.
yeah,
I have
no
no idea what
problem.
liberals say.
Okay, yeah. So what I'm saying, there's a Orion Taraban was one of
Because I
my
feel like
greatest
liberals would say the
philosophies.
opposite. Anyway, by the way,
Yeah, I think that's more of a conservative thing.
yeah,
Oh,
I feel like liberals, from my understanding, would be the one that is saying it's white people's fault. Like that. That is the liberal
right, and
perspective.
that's what I'm saying. I'm not
I'm
saying
saying
that
yeah.
context.
Okay, okay.
I'm saying I agree with you saying. What I'm saying is this. What I'm saying is we go back to life is empty and meaningless. Choice is everything. Right? Even conservatives, I'll tell you something conservatives say you might not heard. If you don't like it, leave. I agree with you. I agree with you.
Let me guess. You're the
Don't they
first
say
one to go.
that? You got a
Oh yeah.
choice. You got a
Yep.
choice. That's what's so powerful. When a lot of white conservatives say, if you don't like it, leave this country. It's the greatest country in the world. I agree. Guess what? Where am I going to go? You can go back right now and go back and find your family and connect to your country and go back and understand them. We can't. You might be my cousin, Kenny. I don't know that. You might be my cousin, like, goes back to our great great grandfathers, the same guy, and he lost two sons. One went to slavery, one stayed here. Me and you might be the best. We don't have that connection. One to one. Two, it depends on. Orion Taraban said this greatest thing. What's true at a population level will make you a liar at the individual level. So we're talking about general populations. Now, maybe you individually didn't make all these choices and you grew up with bad parents and bad circumstances and bad that. But on a population level, it's your fault, homie. Nobody forced you to come to this country. You chose to come to this country. This is freedom. It's not communism. We're not going to give you a handout. We're not going to do this. You got to go. Here's free land. Deal with it. And if those Indians kill you, that's your fault, homie. What I'm saying is the population level, it's not our fault. But on the individual level, it's your responsibility to fix it. On a population level, it's not white people's fault that what we're dealing with now, because what we're dealing with now is mentality. But if you're going to say that, you can also say it's not your fault that you're winning because your ancestors set you up for success. That's what liberals are saying. That's what black people are saying. Your ancestors set you up for success and you dropped the bag. Our ancestors set us up for failure And we have to rely on the universal 80-20 principle and only have a disproportionate amount of us to come out of shit, out of craziness. You should take responsibility. I took responsibility for people telling me I'm white, so therefore I have to work twice. I chose not to do that. 80% of the people can't. It's a universal law.
Well,
That's what I'm saying.
I'm not sure that it's a universal law, my good man. And I'd be hard pressed if you can find some, Josh, if you can.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, but I think I do. I'm familiar with the 80-20 principle. I
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
apply to business, but
No, that's why. 80-20 principle is a universal law of the universe. People just
So
talk about it in business.
the thing that I go on, Kenny, you were starting on something.
so are you saying that 80%, for example, that 80% of black people are basically just fucked?
No, what I'm saying is that if the context is what's the situation you put them in, all things being equal, you give a white person who doesn't think swimming is bad, who doesn't think education is bad, who doesn't think that tenacity is not going to help you, who has his culture, who has his religion, who has choice, you put them next to somebody and give them the exact same circumstances, he's going to fail 80% of the time. Only 20% are going to overcome that on his own and succeed. And the third principle is what you guys are not getting. The obstacle is the way. You know what? It's great that I grew up in a gang mentality. You know why? Because I'm noticing these suburban people get scared and worried about the smallest thing. And you know what's made me successful is I just lost a huge account. You know what helps me? You know why I'm able to be not, I had a couple of days, maybe a week of being sad, and now I'm back in it. You know why? I ain't getting shot.
Yeah.
Nobody raided my house. I'm
No.
not getting molested. I was molested as a kid. I'm not getting fucked with Crips. So, man, there's little small things. And Jay-Z said it. He says, you know why I'm successful in business? Because I've been in a situation where if it goes wrong, you get shot in the head.
So LeBron, let me ask you this question. So the 80-20 principle rule, I see how I see what you're trying to get at from in regards to the what black people going through white people opportunity wise. Does the 80-20 principle apply to all white people, like within the white community? Does the 80-20
Applies to
principle?
everybody in the universe. In other words,
No, no, just
80%,
eighty
yeah,
twenty applies to whether it's
everybody,
okay,
right?
so it's everywhere.
So that's why I use the kid. If you take a white kid and tell him his skin makes him lesser, if you take a white kid and every time he tries to do something that you're doing, you burn it down, you take 100 of those white kids, 80% of them, fuck it, 80% of them are going to be like, fuck it, I can't succeed anyway. I might as well start doing meth. That's what's happening right now. A lot of these white people are going through that. We joke now, but it's been proven the CIA shipped, the Iran-Contra deal made drug dealers ahead of a government, ship drugs into the black neighborhoods, not the white ones, not the poor white neighborhoods, the black ones. I was in Pacoima when they shipped a shipment of guns and left it there. M16s, freaking AK-47s. They didn't do that in the white community. You do that in the white community, it will happen to white people. You teach them, you teach them that, you teach them that. Let's see what white people came up. White people invented the cotton gin. And you say 80%, if you say a large amount of how we were successful is because of the cotton gin, not the cotton. Okay, period. And if you teach people the reason why we're successful is because of the cotton gin, bet, no problem. You start getting national pride, right? But if I teach you, no, black people came up with that. If I lie and say Nigerians came up with that, and Nigerians are better, and Nigerians are good, and Nigerians are better, then that white person's going to start thinking, well, I'm not that important. I could sit there, we would have to take 8 years of college for me to teach you 80% of what black people invented in this country. You know how many white people don't know that it was Edison didn't invent anything. He came up with an invention system. That's why he was awesome. A black assistant came up with the invention of the light bulb. You know how many people know that? Did you guys know that? That's
You told
national
me that last
pride,
week.
brother.
Yeah.
That's
So
national pride.
I,
If you put white people through the same thing we would, they would be the exact same way we are. And 20% would overcome. There was
Okay.
black millionaires back during slavery. They overcame, but only about a small percentage. Most people failed. Because if you put most people in a failing situation, the 80-20 principle tell you 80% will fail.
So do you?
20%
so
will
if
overcome.
maybe this is a
White,
ignorant
black,
question.
Asian, Chinese, Indian. It don't matter.
So here's what, again, this might be an ignorant question, but it sounds like the 80-20 principle is irrefutable and it can't be moved around. It's there. It's just always going to be correct.
Well, but the thing is, it is true, but 80-20 principle is like the difference between the law of gravity and the law of lift. Everybody's subject to the law of gravity, but aeronautic engineers focus on the law of lift. Focus on the 20%. For example, in psychology, what people don't know is that psychology is made for pathology for the first 100 years of study. In other words, psychology was only studying people that are failing and what to do to get them back to normal. About 10 years ago, positive psychology came around. So if I hear a study that says 80% of people that do this fail, most people assume, make it mean, I shouldn't do that. No, what you should do is say, what are the 20% doing? Why did the 20% of people, why did I overcome? Because I rejected all of the lies that I was told was told to my parents, who was told from his grandparents, who was told from his great grandparents. Well, where did it come from? The slave master. So the slave master could give up. They gave up in the 70s and the 80s. Why? Because they accomplished the goal. They made you think you're not worthy. That was the goal. Now you think you're not worthy. We can let you go fail. Go to Chicago and kill each other. Go to these gangs and kill each other. You know what they're not telling you? All of these gangs came up as community activist gangs to stop the white man, the Italians, from fucking with us. You know what they won't tell you is the CIA went in and perpetuated that to get rid of the leaders, to get rid of the activists, and only leave the killers. In other words, what would you do if you took all the government away and only left the police officers to rule everything? That's what happened. They won't tell you that part. They'll only tell you, oh, these guys are killing each other. They won't tell you that the folks in Chicago and the vice lords in Chicago started off as organizations. Like they won't tell you the Black Panther Party created, invented, WIC, was educating ourselves, was helping each other, and was 2A before Republicans were Second Amendment. They won't tell you they went in and made up some bullshit excuses, killed the leaders, and left the welfare alone. They didn't get rid of WIC. But they killed all the people that said everything that Republicans are saying, everything the Second Amendment people are saying. Own your own guns, defend yourself, be self-reliant, educate yourself, take care of your own community. That's all Black Panther. Now Black Panther Party is an evil, racist organization. We didn't come up with that, homie. We didn't start that. The government did. And the black people behind the government did not do that.
So so I'm familiar with these with some of these ideas and some of these facts, these realities. But that's why I want to. This is one of the things I want to know is okay. So that being the case, all these things being the case, what then? Right? How does the black community move forward?
Well, what I'm teaching is we all have a calling. And you can only do what your calling says because everything else is everybody else's calling, right? For example, if you have a car, that's a Mercedes Brothers calling. If you have a computer, that's either you probably are either working on Steve Jobs' calling or Bill Gates' calling, unless you're a Linux guy, right?
Never
So
met a
what
Linux
I
guy.
say is you're a Linux guy, right? So what I say is those three principles. What I'm going to do is I'm looking for young black men to teach them on how to change this around. That's why I say it's our responsibility. So what you do is forgive yourself. It's not your fault. Take responsibility because it's your responsibility to do something, and understand that every obstacle they put in your way is the way. It made you stronger. Going through the jungles of the ghetto made me stronger. Going through racism made me stronger. Having to navigate against police officers that are legitimately worried about their safety, because I've been around some of these gangs, they will shoot your ass, made me stronger. That's why I believe in those three principles. So if you guys know any young black men that I can help, that's what I want to do. But that's what I think what we need to do moving forward.
First, I'm a fan of your principles. I think I understand the second two much more than I do the first. However, I can
Right.
see the value of the first. But I don't really know exactly, I'm still not exactly sure how it's applied. But I do believe in the second two very much. And you're absolutely correct. So you mentioned before, like, how, in suburbia, they worry about little things and you don't care much about it because you've been through, more life or death
And that's
situations.
not a racial thing. I met some
No,
white
no,
guys that have been through the same thing and they say the same thing, right?
no, it's not. I mean, guys who've been through military will tell you, guys who've been through
Right.
all kinds. So it's the threshold. When you go, it's you when you put into a very difficult situation and you manage to survive, your threshold for pain, your threshold for suffering, your
I love
threshold
that.
for discomfort increases, right?
I love that. That's
And
exactly
so
it.
this is one of the reasons young men should get into martial arts. Young men should get into really so that as they get older, one of the things that was really cool, for I met a young man who, pretty tough guy, pretty just brave, like courageous, and you find he's courageous because when he was younger, his father would take him everywhere. He would take him to his friends. He would take him out hunting. And so this kid he's seen deer killed. He's been through martial arts. When he was fighting, he would fight people who were bigger than him, tougher than him, and he'd take punches left and right. And by the time he was 14 years old, these things were nothing to him, right? He could be punched in the face and it wouldn't be anything. And it's the same thing with, like, when you have friends that you talk with a lot or you're always in a sparring match, eventually conversation and arguments aren't anything that really affect your feelings in a way that makes you very vulnerable and aggressive, right? So I think it is a good thing. And if you're putting young men, if you're teaching young men, young black men that, listen, mate, you got that. I like that. How did you put it? You said the
The
obstacle is the
obstacle.
way, right? If you're teaching
Great
them
book.
that,
I recommend everybody to read that book.
okay, so that's the title of the book.
That's the title of the book, but the concept comes from Seneca.
Okay, and so I think it's very helpful, and I think that it's the kind of call that young men like. It's so usually, you know, young men don't like things that are very fluffy, and it has to be true though. But young men don't like things that are fluffy and pat them on the back all the time. They like things, whether they like it consciously or not. Their soul, their manhood responds to difficulty, and it responds to adversity and triumphing
Yes.
over adversity. It gives them courage, it gives them strength, it gives them self worth,
Hold on,
gives
hold
them.
on, hold on, hold on. Hey, somebody get this guy a pulpit because he preaching right now. Okay, go ahead.
Didn't see that shit coming.
I did not see that, dude. I was like, there must be a party going on in LeBron.
I thought I thought he was gonna call for a cigar or a beer or something.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
But yeah, I think it's incredibly helpful. So how many young men are you are in your is it a
Oh,
school?
I,
Is
I don't have any yet. Because I'm living this the way I teach it, which is you start off small and you start off beta. So I just finished those three fundamental principles. I reviewed 1,000 different ones. I played with them. I meditate on them, and I recently came to that conclusion. So I'm
mm,
looking for my first student, and when my first student will be, like working the kinks out with him, and that's what I'm doing for free, and that's why I want to help them. And I'm making the promise that that student will have three, four things. Or three, you will be a head of household, you will be an entrepreneur, and you will be a leader in your community, and you will have a direction for your life. So I'm offering that to any young black man that wants to do it. But I want to go back to what you said you don't understand the first thing. You being Nigerian, I think it should be a simple concept. So maybe I'm not explaining it to you right.
Please.
You were born in Nigeria, yes?
Correct.
When you got here, how'd you get here? Plane or boat?
I came in plane. It's actually a very
Who
reasonable
came with
question.
you?
I came by myself.
Perfect. Was anybody sitting next to you filling you with lies?
No.
So therefore, you started succeeding with what your parents taught you, what you came up with your experience taught you, right? Whatever little or big success or whatever success you're having is because of your own thinking, right?
Well, I would say a part of it for sure. So I would attribute my success, if you would call it success, to three things. The first thing is absolutely the way my father raised me, and the way he taught me to think, the way he taught me to behave. My father, for example, would have hours of conversation with me. Not all the time, but when we did, would have hours of conversation. I had my I don't know. I had um my first parental beer with my dad at the age at maybe at 15 or 16, and then we
Mm-hmm.
would chat about these kinds of chat
I
about
love it.
life. And
Yeah,
then the second thing I would say is reading. So books,
I
reading and
love it.
conversation. So books and conversation with people
Perfect.
who are older than me, wiser than me, very helpful. And then the third
Love
thing,
it.
which is my opinion the most important thing, my God.
Oh,
So
I love it.
yeah.
So who's your God?
Oh, Christ. Christ
Why did
is
you choose
King.
Christ? Why did you choose Christ?
Okay, two reasons. The first reason is something that I cannot deny. My grandmother was a Christian. When I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, I became very conscious of the fact that she would make everybody in the house wake up every day at 5 a.m. or 6-ish a.m. and we'd be on our knees and she'd be praying for everybody and praying over the family and things like that. So I understood that there was a God and he was pretty
So
important
you
to us.
saw somebody exercising and living a life as a Christian.
100%.
I love
Then
it. I
the
love it.
sec the second part, the second reason I chose, not I don't say second reason I'm a Christian or I serve Christ is because I had a very undeniable encounter with him, where
I
multiple
love it.
actually, but um he made himself very known, very clear, very known to me, and
I love it.
yeah,
I love it. Okay, so I want to recap. So your dad reading and your grandmother seeing them, and then something separate was you had your own personal situation with God that
yeah,
sealed it for you, right? I
not
love
yeah.
all of that. I have one question. Did that make you change any of your actions or words or the way that you actually did things? Not your thinking, but the way you did things.
I changed the way I did things, but not the way I
Perfect.
thought. Well,
Perfect.
not
Perfect.
the way
Perfect.
I fundamentally thought. Yeah,
Okay, perfect. So your dad, your grandmother, books, and Christ, which also affected your actions.
100%.
On the plane, before the plane happened, I killed your dad. Before that happened, I raped and destroyed your grandmother's soul and her vibrance for life. I told you you couldn't read, and when you had a relationship with God in Epiphany, I prevented you from doing everything you wanted to do. You think you would have the same success you have now with that?
I would say it'd be incredibly difficult, but I would say that the reason I can't say 100%, but I understand what you're saying, and I would say I would agree with you because I'm a human being. I'm not going to lie. Absolutely, it would be difficult, but the reason I can't be 100% certain is because of the God factor, and here's why. I know that I believe that when God snatches a man, He snatches him for real. So he has a way of breaking down every destructive mindset, every destructive element, whether spiritual or psychological, in a man, and eventually getting him to the place he needs to be. But
Right.
it doesn't happen if two things don't happen. If it doesn't happen if two things don't happen. If God doesn't intervene, or there is no external force outside of God to intervene. So there has to be some sort of intervention, intervention, usually God, or external intervention, usually people.
Right. And then here's what I think, and this is my belief, right? The scriptures are really clear. Like, and a lot of people have, atheists have this problem, and I don't. He's like, look, I'm God, I'm your God, and you turn to me whether you're a slave or whether you're free, right? So what we're not talking about, I'm not, YBMA is not here to talk about your spiritual freedom, right? Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. He was
Damn.
enslaved. He was enslaved, right?
Yeah.
I love it because you just mentioned two things. So he had an epiphany, which is the same God we worship, told him, you're free in here and there's nothing they can ever do to you. There's only one reason why you know about that, homie. You know why you know about that?
Why?
The second piece you talked about. The United States government's badass army came in freedom, baby.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yes, you're right. God can jump in. And if God wants you to, God can get you out of slavery. God can take you all those things. But sometimes He gave me the calling, and Martin Luther King the calling, and Malcolm X the calling, and Bobby Seale the calling. And I'm fine to admit they might assassinate me for my calling. But it's my calling to go out there and do the second part. You have to accept, one, it's not your fault. Two, it's your responsibility. And three, the obstacle's the way. If you can't do that and God doesn't intervene, I can't help you. But you're right, homie. The only thing is God might say, I'll make you okay in here, but you're still a damn slave. And I'm okay with that. Because if it turns out that we end up being slaves again, the only thing that will give me peace is my relationship with God. But guess what? He's going to have to send somebody in there to get me out. He's going to have to intervene to get me out. And I'm him. He sent me.
Yeah.
He sent
So
Malcolm X. He sent Martin Luther King. He sent Bobby Seale. He sent
Oh.
H. Rap Bound. And guess what they keep doing? Assassinating us. And if they assassinate me, then it is what it is.
so you're right, and here's where it gets pretty tricky. But you're correct. That there are. This is where love comes into the world, right? And I don't really know. I'm not one to talk about love like I understand it. I really don't. But I knows it when I sees it, right? So there is an aspect. There is. I I like how on a horizontal level, human beings are meant to like love each other in the sense of we're supposed to really take care of each other. We're supposed to bring out one of those sayings I hate the most in this world is teach a man to fish. You give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish, and you feed him for the rest of his life. I don't like that saying, and here's why. That saying is incredibly simplistic, and it's a very good way of people to justify not helping. So what I mean by that is you find out that it's true that if you teach a man to fish, you feed him for life. But nobody ever tells you that you have to buy the man a boat, you have to buy him some fishing rods, you have to spend time with him teaching him how to fish. That's a lot of hours, right? That's a lot of friendship, right? You also have to invest in his life. You also have to be there's a lot of time, energy, and money that goes into teaching a man
Yes.
how to fish,
Yes.
right? And
Amen.
so when
Amen.
you make the argument that give a man a fish, which is actually usually a way for people to say, don't give the homeless man the money, what they're actually saying is, don't give him the money, don't help him out, and don't do that other thing that they're preaching for you to do that's way more difficult because it's very hard to find people who are willing to do that kind of exercise for another human being.
Right. Right.
But they are out there. I remember I tell the story of a couple men in my life who have been incredibly helpful, like a man named Mr. Massaro. I named my son after him. He was an incredible man. He's still alive. He is an incredible man. And he's a Brazilian Japanese man.
Nice.
And when I met him, he was very kind to me. He was a second father to me, right? And he helped me in ways that I don't think it's normal for any other person to do. It's just not normal, right? Like I wouldn't go into too much detail, but let's just say that I named my son after him. That's how important he is to me, at least in my mind, right? But love is one of those things that on a horizontal level sets people free. And so when you have people like, now I don't know these men personally, I don't know their motivations, but I do believe that when I look at them at face value, what they were fighting
Which
for,
men are we
especially
talking about?
Martin Luther King,
Oh,
Malcolm
okay,
X.
that's mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of Malcolm X, and here's why.
Me too. Yeah.
When I hear him speak, um, he he was very hard on black people, but he could tell that he cared a lot for them. He did not baby them. He did not. He talked to them like they were adults and they were capable of doing things for themselves, and not just doing things, but doing extraordinary things. And I think that it's kind of like one of those passages that says we have a lot of teachers, but not many fathers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we need loving fathers, whether biological or surrogate, that come in and help people out because that's love. Love changes lives, right?
I love that. And that's what I want. That's what I want to do with YBMA. That's why I picked one student. You know, like I'm a Sith master, right? I start with one person.
Yeah.
I want to change their lives, right? I want to change their lives. So it's like, I want to take and show that love and walk them through all of that. And I want to give him a fish, and I want to teach him how to fish, and I want to support him on all the things that he'll need, because that's what I was talking about. You're actually proving my point that um, that's what the U.S. government did to all other human beings besides us. They gave them free land. Like you said, you need a boat in order to do this. They gave them fishing rods. They gave them instruction manuals. They gave them grants, right? You know, and so it's like, well, they gave us the opposite. They gave us promises and broke them. They said to the people, go out there to Idaho, pick up the land. Here's free acres. Just claim it. Start your land. Start something. We'll protect you. We'll send the United States government in to fight these Indians, even though we're taking their land. We took it from them, and we'll protect you from them taking it back. And then they've convinced people that the children of these people who've benefited from that we who have been the opposite of that should be expected to produce the same results. I don't care that that's fair. Who cares? Life's not fair. I'm just saying what God has called me to do is right the wrong. What God has called me to do is say, don't feel bad. You know how many black people feel bad because we think we're failing because it's us. No, man, we did not bring Don't Swim from over here from Nigeria. We did not bring Don't Get Educated over here from Nigeria. We did not bring Don't Work Together with other black people from Nigeria. I have friends now that are just now connecting with their people in Africa and starting businesses. We didn't bring that stupid shit from Africa. You know that because you're from there. They told us that, and we accepted it, and we passed it on to our kids. That's why it's not our fault. We didn't drop the bag. If you failed, your parents came over here and they failed. They didn't raise you right. They didn't do something. Maybe they died and it wasn't your fault. Maybe you were an infant, or maybe you were just one out of the statisticals that says no matter what you do, there's some people, the 80-20 rule says no matter what you do, throw at them, 20% will succeed.
LeBron, let me ask you a question. I know we're kind of running on time, but this has kind of been perking on my mind. When you talked about number one, you said it's not your fault, and essentially forgive yourself is kind of what you're getting at, right?
Mm-hmm.
The thing that popped in my head immediately was I was thinking about slavery and just the, we acknowledged in the very beginning slavery happened prior to racism, right? It's always slavery has always been around, right?
Right.
And everybody played a role, right? And you look at the East Atlantic slave trade, right? And you have
Mm-hmm.
that, right? And you have the role that the Arabs played in it, and then you see the Europeans getting invited into it, right? Invited is a loose word, obviously, I get it, but they get into it, right? And it seems like very economic driven, right? And it wasn't like, hey, everybody, here's guns, get on the boat, right? There was actual transactions that were being had between the African people and the Europeans, the African people and the Arabs. So it operated more like a, I think it operated more as a business
Mm-hmm.
than we care to recognize or people recognize.
Right.
And the brutal routes seem to have happened between, the question is, right, how did the Africans get the Africans to be in a position where they're now selling them off to people?
That's not
That's
my
a, but
question.
hold on. Yeah, I get where I'm trying to go to a different perspective. But you have something that happened here that created an environment where the Arabs and the Europeans were like, economically, it seemed like it was more profitable for them to go and grab and then go here, right? And you see in the America that in the very beginning it wasn't really racism driven. Right
Right.
now, we do know racism eventually does take over and that becomes a
Right.
thing.
Right.
So my question is, how does, because we're going back in history, we're saying, hey, here's how the Europeans impacted your way of thinking. Is there any component in this process that deals with, well, here's how you got from here to, does that make sense? Like, is the starting point when you got on the boat, or is there something there that needs to be reconciled between the African
You're
people
talking
in
about
general?
the
I,
culpability of the
I'm
Africans
saying,
themselves.
yeah.
Is
I'm
that like
I'm
a,
not.
okay.
I'm saying it's a completely nil conversation, and that's why we're
Mm.
having problems. I don't care about slavery. We can Jews went through slavery. They're killing the game. I'm not even talking about that. I'm not
Did you
saying
say they're
slavery is
killing
not
the
your
game?
fault. They're killing the
Did you
game.
say that?
They're killing the game. Jews are killing the game.
Yeah, yeah, no, they were,
They're
yeah.
so good. People are acting like they're victims. Oh, this is all ran by Hollywood. Okay, they sure are. So what? You could have went down to
But
Hollywood in the 20s and 30s. No, my point is forget slavery altogether. Forget Jim Crow
okay.
altogether. Forget all of that. The problem I have is the difference between Italians. Irish were here as indentured slaves. They went through the same thing. They could just buy themselves out. The only difference. You know what they
Mm.
didn't do? They didn't change Irish culture. Irish went through racism. Italians went through racism. Gypsies go through racism. You know what they didn't do? They didn't
And
do in
give
the
up their
80s and
culture.
90s ship drugs into the Irish neighborhoods. It was the
I see what you're saying.
prevention of overcoming that I have a problem. The Jews kept their religion, kept their culture, kept their language, kept their traditions, kept their
Mm.
family, kept their connections, everything. Put them in slavery, we're going to overcome. Put them in Nazi Germany, we're going to overcome. Put them
So
in
let me ask you
racism with
this.
trans people, we're going to overcome. I don't care about the problem. I care about taking my tools away to overcome.
So yeah, I see. I excuse me. I see.
Yeah.
It's you're more concerned with all the
Implications of it.
psychological damage,
Not just
more than
psychological, not just psychological. I'll give you an example. I'm a
cultural.
libertarian.
Yeah.
Not just
You're
cultural,
what?
it's all, every tool taken away. I'll give you an example. I'm a libertarian. I'm totally fine if somebody says, I want to start a gas station where niggas can't come in and buy gas. No problem. Perfect. Great. You know what I have a problem with? Is when it's statistically known that if I walk in there to get a loan to get that gas station like he did, there's a lower percentage that everything being equal, I'll either get it with a higher interest rate or I won't get it at all. That's my problem. You know why? Because I'll open up a store next to you and say, everybody come on in. I like your money. I believe in green. That's the problem. That's the problem. So any tool used to prevent me from overcoming my circumstances, that's the problem. Slavery, you're right. We enslave people. You're right. Probably one other tribe besides the Igbo tribe enslaved us because we're trying to do business, brought us over to the Americas. That's right, no problem. Slavery's no problem, right? You were able to bring your beliefs, your culture, your values, your tools, whatever money you had in your pocket, whatever clothes you had, and overcome and to
Mm.
achieve. Nobody took those tools away from you. You had a dad that was able to teach you. You know what we had? They separated us from slavery. And then when they couldn't separate us, they told us not to listen to our dads. And then when they didn't do that, they came up with systems to put our dads in jail so they can't sit there and teach you. And then they put systems so my grandparents are out there hoochie mama in the clubs, not teaching us what your grandparents taught you. That's my problem. Now, you know who's also number one? You know what Nigerians are also number one for? Fraud. That's on y'all.
I gotta watch out for Kenny
That's
also.
what y'all got to do.
I think the
You
Indians
got
are
to take.
getting us over now.
I think they are. Yep, they are.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I won't blame. I won't. I'm saying you take Nigerians for what it is. They're also robotics. Nigeria is number one in robotics. Has been that way for 15 years now. Number one in robotics.
I don't know.
Number one in robotics. Look it up. Number one. You know why? Because they have Nigerian thinking and they have Nigerian values. And Nigeria has decided, even though it's the poorest country in Africa,
Oh,
they've
Nigeria is not
decided
the
to
poorest country
focus.
in Africa.
Well, that's what I heard a statistic. I didn't look it up, so I won't die on that hill.
That's
But
okay.
my point is that their mentality is about AI, robotics. It's about education. It's about focusing on the future,
Yeah.
right? I'm still dealing with the crack epidemic. My dad would have been a regular, normal, middle class guy if it wasn't for Reagan. Period. Period. So here's the thing. Now white people are dealing with the meth epidemic, and maybe Obama had something to do with it. I don't know. But guess what? A lot of white people are dealing with problems they wouldn't be dealing with if their government didn't ship opioids and meth in this country, because we ain't growing opioids in America. We don't have the climate for that. We ain't getting opioids over here, so white people are not responsible for that. So yes, in that situation, if I would say, I'll give you an example where you were saying, Josh, if you are a white person that grew up in Idaho, for example, at one point my town was number one in meth production, Antelope Valley, California. It's not your fault that you were in that situation and you were in a situation where you thought meth was the answer. It's not your fault, so forgive yourself. But you better fix it. Doesn't matter what the government's doing. And the obstacle's the way. I would tell that white person who grew up in the trailer park, and his trailer park, the government ended up with opioids in his neighborhood. Yeah, it's not your fault. But overall, when you talk about, oh, black people are doing this for themselves, and black people causing this problem, and black people causing that problem. Nah, homie, we didn't create that, but we do need to fix it. It is our responsibility to fix it. We didn't ship cocaine into our neighborhoods. We didn't ship AK-47s. They don't make AK-47s in this country. We didn't do that, but we
So
better fix it.
I,
Because
I,
they're not
I,
going to fix it. Because it's right. It's not the white people who's alive now. They didn't cause that
Yeah.
problem. Their grandparents did.
okay. I can understand now the idea of it's not
Mhm.
false. I can understand that. However, um, uh, if you're talking specifically about these, you mentioned you refer to them as tools, right? If you're talking about these tools being taken away, I can get behind that and I can say, okay, I can see at least to some extent that reality. Um, However, I do believe, personally speaking, this is just my own shenanigans here. I think it is far better to focus on. Um, I think it's far better to focus on the responsibility. No,
I
not
agree.
not to say that to do so. I think there's three spheres of the mind that need to be taken care of. Then the first sphere is not the most important, but it's important. Is the emotional sphere, forgiveness and to be forgiven.
Right,
Second sphere is the mind, the building of the mind, the building of the
right,
character,
right,
responsibility.
right,
The third sphere is how you say the action, pushing forward in the midst
right.
of difficulty. Hence,
Yep. We're
um,
agreement. We're in agreement. I
and
think it's
so
the least important one. I would say it's this. It's 10%. I would say spend 10% of your time forgiving yourself and realizing you didn't put yourself in this situation, and neither did your parents and your great grandparents and your great great grandparents. It's not you as a culture, as a race, as a person, as an individual. But spend 80% of your time on taking responsibility and fixing it, and
Hmm.
use the tool. The other 10%, focus on all the tools that you need to overcome. But I would teach a young black man, spend 80% of, I teach young black men to steal responsibility. Let's take responsibility, don't get. In other words, if something goes wrong, let's say I'm the CEO of a business. Something goes wrong. I just got this into this with a couple of my business. We had a lot of problems, and there was a lot of people doing a lot of things. But I told them, I said, I'm sorry, it's my responsibility. I'm wrong. I messed up. That doesn't change the fact that this person was spreading rumors and this person is doing that. I say, take it, because whoever owns the responsibility owns the power. So you're right. Spend 80% of your time on what you can focus on, what you can change. You can change your mentality. You can change your approach. You can change the tools that you use. You can change and see, like, hey, you know what? Like, this whole thing about the black card. You know, if you do this, you don't have the black card. I lost my black card. Get rid of that shit.
I've never heard
Get
that
rid of
before. What the
that.
hell is this?
Right.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, that's a
Is that
very
real?
what are
common.
you
It's a real
talking
thing?
That's
about?
a it's a very common thing where if yeah, you can lose your black card. Yeah,
For
Yeah.
what? Like, what does that even mean? What is okay?
Like, in other
So
words, for example,
essentially you're
what
not
the
black
slave
anymore.
master taught you, this is what it means to be black. So
yeah,
now we're repeating that bullshit. So as a surfer, I lose my black card because I'm on the water surfing. What are you
And
talking about?
then
I can
and
do
then
whatever.
a white person can gain a black card, and that's called getting invited to the cookout.
Exactly. That's
And so it's
bullshit.
like
That's bullshit. What are you talking about?
so here's
That's
what I do
one
think it's
thing,
interesting.
that's a mentality that's hurting the black community.
One of the things I remember, one of the Kenny and I, one of our first conversations we've ever had, and we'll kind of wrap up, but we talk about like, if you want to make something cool, if you want to make something, like give it to a black person, like just let a black person get a hold of it, and it's game over. Like
it's
it
it's
is,
it runs cool ASAP.
but it also works negatively too, right? Incorporate
Right.
something negative. It's like there's nobody that can spread it like we can. Like nobody can
Right.
make it cool. Like I remember there's a video and it talks about like this guy's making fun of black culture, and one of the things he said is like it's like this guy reading, and then it's like it talks about how like black people make fun of anything, right? And it's like, oh sorry, I'll do a good one. It's a father, black father, and a son, and they're like hugging, and then he's like, this nigga loves his father. Like it's like the joke is like no matter what this guy does, oh look at this nigga, he's educated, right? It's like you'll get clowned on for doing things that
Yeah.
progress you forward, but you get
Exactly.
praised. Wasn't Chris Rock talked about this, right? He says the guy that gets out of college, graduates college, he'll get ripped apart, but the person that came from prison is like
Celebrated.
lifted up
Oh,
high, like
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Yep,
We
yep,
we
yep.
we give people, you know, I get street cred because I went to jail and I came out and now I'm hardened. Are you kidding me?
But
Like,
that's the stuff you're saying that we need to. That's the stuff you're saying
exactly.
that's like, yeah, that
Yes.
I
It's our
dude,
it's our mentality that's hurting us. So that's what everybody else is saying. They're saying, "Hey man, it's not the cops, it's your way of it's what you guys are doing." Well, the only difference is I agree with them. The difference is it didn't come from the Igbo tribe. It didn't come from Ethiopia, homie. Didn't come from Mongolia. You know, it didn't come from Asia.
hmm,
It came from the slave master and all those other people. And it ain't 2,000 years ago. They pumped drugs into our neighborhood in the 80s and 90s, homie, not
yeah,
200 years ago, right? And so when you have a bad mentality and you have a bad value system and you have no culture, and you didn't choose your religion, you chose Christianity. We didn't, right? That's a huge choice. Doesn't the scripture say that's why you have free will? You became Christian because of free will. No Christian organization took over, killed everybody, and forced you and put a gun in your head. You chose Christianity. That's a
yeah,
powerful thing. Then you take all those things away and then put drugs in front of you. What do you think is going to happen? You don't
yeah,
have no grandmother to teach you about how to be a Christian. You have no dad to sit you down, like you said, with the beer talk. You had no culture to value. Man, you as a Nigerian have what? Millennial of cultural value. You guys, you've been around before there wasn't an Irish. Before there was anybody on that island, Nigeria was there. Before there was a Russia, Nigeria was there. That's cultural pride. We don't have that. You know, we have my grandfather was smart enough to kiss white people's ass. How am I going to be proud of that? And then the black people that don't want any problems and want to say, yes, sir, no problem, yes, sir, master, we're mad at them. We call them Uncle Toms. How can you blame somebody? I would have been, let me tell y'all this, everybody. I would have been a house nigga. You mean to tell me, kiss ass, and I get out of this freaking stop picking cotton? You know, out of 100 people, 20 of them are going to say, I'm going inside and kiss white people ass. But we put ourselves down for that. For people who chose the easy route. Most people choose the easy route. That's called a universal law. What is it called? What is it called then? What is it called? There's a universal law. It says like, I'm paraphrasing it, but it's like,
Yeah.
whenever there's an obstacle, you'll find the most easiest and most effective way. That's why we have to teach our kids to choose the hard way, choose the obstacle. But we put ourselves down for people who choose the easy way. I don't want to be out there in the heat all day. I have to produce a ridiculous amount of cotton, get beat by this guy. Oh, but if you want to be black and be proud, stay out here with us and get beat. What are you talking about? I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
the right decision, but you're going to put some people down for making the easiest choice? We do that all the time.
My head
And that
immediately
is
went
killing
to like
us.
my
That's
man
killing
went
us.
immediately went to the inner cities, right? The snitching idea, right? It's like you go to
Right.
jail for people
Yeah,
that
don't snitch.
don't like, yeah, but it's like these people don't like. I mean, Takashi 6ix9ine talked about this. It's
Right.
probably not the best example, but well, I know we gotta wrap up. I do have
I
something
just
that
want to end
is
with that one thing you said.
go,
The
go.
Italian mafia was taken down because all them motherfuckers snitched. All of them did. All of them did. The
Yeah,
Italian mafia will be running um, Atlantic City, Vegas, New York, and New Jersey if they didn't snitch. But our culture is going around teaching that false thing that we got from Italians, that we got from the Irish mafia. We got that bullshit, but that's not how Italians live. They all snitched. The biggest movie in the world right now, a gangster movie, is Goodfellas. You know why we had that movie? Because he snitched. But what does our culture teach us? No snitching. Snitches get stitches. No, they don't. They get a house paid for, and they get a whole new identity, and they get a whole better life, and they get a record deal, and they get movie deals, and they live great lives. That's what I'm talking about, and you got it.
God bless witness
man.
protection.
Hey,
Exactly.
let me throw us out with let me have a sign out with one question. All right, I need you guys to respond, and we'll make it quick. I promise. So there's a craziness happening right now on social media, and the question is, one gorilla versus 100 men, right?
I
To
never
death.
seen that question. I don't get that.
Okay, it's a huge thing. So right now, the
Okay.
essentially
Like
somebody
a
tweeted
gorilla
out, can
fighting
100
100
men,
men.
can 100 average men, just a random men, 100 random men, could they get together? And again, they're not like strategizing. It says combat straight up. Could they beat one gorilla that's trying to kill them? So, LeBron, what do you think? Kenny, what do you think? And we'll sign out with that.
100 men? Yeah, sure.
You
I'm
think
on
so?
the I'm on the gorillas team here, man.
I think Kenny wants the gorilla to win. Well, Mr. LeBron,
That count me.
LeBron, I
Well, LeBron, it was a
uh,
pleasure, man. It was a pleasure.
You
absolutely,
guys are
absolutely.
amazing. You guys are amazing.
Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. We really enjoyed having you. I would, again, maybe we'll talk about another time to do this, but I really want to get into your. I was trying to get it in the very beginning, which was I'm really interested in Christianity and how you mended it with the worldview that, like, I wanted to dig into that. Like, clearly, the temple, like, we talked about this last week, the way you view the church is much different than a lot of people view it.
Right,
We talked about
right.
the Pope. I wanted to talk about the views of how do you guys view Jesus? How do you guys view like what is
Yeah.
scripture to you?
Yeah,
I want to get into that.
you're gonna get me in a whole lot of trouble. Let's do it. I'm with it. Let's go to the episode. I'm gonna get into a whole lot of trouble with that one.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you on here, man. Really enjoyed having you. Great dialogues. And with
Great
that,
time.
God bless y'all and have a good week.
Thank you guys. I love it, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks,
Thank you.
man.
Peace
I
out.
appreciate it.